Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Today I'm just working on a few projects that will help me out as I maybe attend some shows and such this summer. So thought I would share a couple of things I'm working on and then at the end hopefully share out the files as well. So today I'm working on a pen stand that hopefully will be collapsible so that it can pack down really well, but be something that you can use to display pens if you're at craft fairs and such, or maybe just on your workbench if this might be something that suits you that way. So if this interests you, you want to check it out, stay tuned. I'm going to jump right into it. All right, so we're over here at the computer and I do a lot of my design work in SketchUp. It's a 3D modeling tool I've been using for well over 10 years and old habits die hard. So it's kind of stuck and I like using it so that I can actually fit pieces together, model it up, make sure it looks okay, make sure that pieces are going to fit before I send it off to the laser. Not to say that I don't do more tweaks after that, but this does help cut down on at least maybe a couple revisions where maybe something is out of alignment. So let's jump over there and I will show you what I'm working with, and then we'll jump into LightBurn and maybe XCS as I develop this through the lasers. So here we are in SketchUp, and this is what I've modeled up. Now, it's, there's only so many ways you can design something. This is similar to some others I've seen, but kind of my spin on it. And I started out with just a square and put my notches in, and I wanted to make these work with multiple pens. So these are a little bit bigger in diameter, so they would even fit your larger markers and such. So they're about 7/8 inch of a diameter if this was a full circle. So they are a little bit big. You may want to redesign this and scale it down if you're just dealing with smaller pens and such. But I wanted the flexibility, and this is where we're at. And I also wanted this to be knocked down. So these pieces on the ends and such, they all just kind of notch together and then they kind of interlock so that as it's put together, it should stay put. But if you needed to knock the whole thing down for transport, that would work as well. So it's really comprised of two side rails and then the top and bottom pieces that kind of lock those in place and make it square, and then the kind of the back kickstand support piece. And I did want to, be mindful of how far back this came. If you have it, at a higher angle and too shallow, this is going to tend to be tippy. You kind of want this back as your fulcrum point so that, think of it as a teeter-totter. You want one side to be biased, and so that it's not going to want to tip back. And so I played around with the design, pushed it back, pushed the angle back a bit, just so much that it would hold up pretty well. I mean, a heavy-handed person or maybe a really strong breeze might still blow this over, but this seems to be a nice happy medium without making that piece too long, but that is really in there to support that. So they all just kind of notch together and works well. This is made out of roughly 1/8 inch material because I want to be able to use lighter weight material in the assembly, as well as thinking I can also do this in acrylic. And the 1/8 inch 3mm acrylic is a lot cheaper than the 1/4 inch, and that is generally overkill. But you could scale this up if you have thicker material, and we'll look at that briefly in LightBurn. So as I design this, what I end up doing is once I'm happy with that, I will collapse all of these items flat, and then I will put them into basically just outline. I take the faces away, kind of lay them out as I want, and that's what we see here. So we've got our two side rails, and I flip one over just because, if your laser isn't burning as clean as possible, you'll have two clean edges on the outsides or insides, and then your top bottom pieces and your back kickstand. And overall, this should fit on. Let's double check here. So if we put a guideline here, well, actually we got to move that there. So if that's our starting line and we drag another one over here, you see down in the lower right corner, we're right at about 10 inches wide. And if we drag one up to the top, we are about just over 7, well, you're going to be about 10 by 8 inch piece of material. So not a lot of material to cut this out. And pretty happy with that. So with SketchUp Pro, what I'm able to do is I'm actually able to export this as a 3D model. Unfortunately, my options for this, they don't have SVG, which a lot of software likes as well, but we do have the DXF version, and that is a vector file that most will read. However, there can be some issues with it. But I do have good luck importing that into LightBurn. So let's jump over there and take a look at that. So here is the file brought into LightBurn, and you can see the same layout here. And what we can do here is double check that all of our lines are one object, that they're welded together and not individuals. That will help make it a more efficient cut instead of jumping around. And if they're not, what you can do is you can auto join selected shapes. So that will, if you have any like curves that are all little splines and such, you want to go ahead and select your whole object and make sure they're closed. Use this closed selected paths with tolerance or auto join selected shapes. That should bring them in together, because you do want your individual pieces all to be kind of one line. And then the other thing you can do is you can play with the slot resize tool. Now this should work pretty well because all of our ends are square and they should be all the same because they're the same thickness material. So what we're going to do is highlight them all. We're going to come up here to tools and resize slots in selection. And then we want to go with slot width. Now for this one, I am using some material that's just slightly less than 1/8 inch material. So our old thickness material is 0.11 inches. And it's going to highlight all the ones it sees. And then you're going to say your new material thickness. So if we wanted to say this is actually 1/8 inch, we would go to 0.125. And you'll look at these and you're showing that all the arrows are moving out. If it was smaller, say it was 0.1, now it's going to show that it's going to move these lines in. Now you could use some 1/4 inch material for this. However, what I would caution you against is this moves both lines from the center out or in. It'd be nice if you could bias this, like say, move against one line to the other, like move from this line out instead of just both. So I'll show you here. If we go to 0.25, this is going to push them out. And if I hit OK, now it's going to resize all those, which is great. However, you'll notice this is getting really narrow here, and that's likely going to be a break point for us. So I also see we have a little bit of a squiggle here. So we'd want to go in and fix those because it's actually coming out from that curve, and we wouldn't want that either. So a couple of things you're going to want to double check with that, but the tool is really nice to use for resizing them. You see we got the same issue over here where we'd have to go into a node editor and just basically take out those nodes and rejoin those. But we're not using 1/4 inch material, so I'm going to go ahead and undo that. If this was where we're at, we could go ahead and set up our speed and power for our laser. But I'm actually going to be using the xTool P2. So we're going to then want to export this from here. I would use this tool, export, and I can change this to an SVG. And I've already done that. I've been playing around here. You can see a few different ones. And we can export it as whatever our file is. And then that is going to be able to be pulled into XCS really well. I have much better luck working with SVGs in XCS than I do with DXFs. So let's get the P2 fired up and we'll import that and get this job going. All right, we've got XCS loaded here and we have our P2 powered on. I'm going to go ahead and try to connect to it over Wi-Fi. It is seeing the P2 right there. And we're connected. What it should do now is take a picture with the main camera showing our piece of Baltic birch, 3mm Baltic birch in there. And so we're good to go there. We're all connected up. What you can do with the P2 now, you can have it take an auto measurement to try to identify the thickness of your material. So we're just going to come over to the aimed measure. And I like to go right about in the middle of the work area. So the P2 is going to move over and drop it down, and it'll show it's right on 3mm thickness. So I notice sometimes if there's a little bit of a warp or some weird lighting, you might be off a little bit. So you can go ahead and override. So if I know this was actually 2.8mm, I can type that in there. But we do know it's 3 and it detected as 3. So we're doing good so far. So what we want to do is bring in our image. So we're going to come up here to image, and we have our angled 9-up pen display for laser. This is the SVG file that I created. We're going to go ahead and open that, and now we're going to try to make sure it fits on our material, which it does. So we can drag this in here. One thing you want to do though is always take a close view, and I'll show you why. Because if you come over here, there can be just a little bit of skewing off the main camera at the extents. So that moves the head over, gets it closer. And this one's pretty close. You'll see there's just a minor difference there. But top to bottom, so like if I come down here, let's see how far off vertically it might be at the extents. Here you see it looks almost to be like a 1/4 inch off. So if you're really getting close to those edges, definitely use your capture close view to get a few extra checks on all your corners, make sure it's well within it. Now in XCS here, and actually I'm going to go ahead and get that out of there. We know this is going to fit in there. What we want to do is make sure we have our layer selected. It's all going to be the same. And it defaults to score processing. So what I like to do is make sure we come over to cut, and we can either do manual setting if we have done a material test, but they do have some presets. So I'm going to click off of our layer, and we're going to come here to material, and we're actually going to go down and select 3mm basswood plywood. And I've found that that's a pretty close setting for our Baltic birch. So if we highlight this again, it's now going to show you it's going to run at 100% power, 30mm a second in a single pass. And so that is what we're going to run with. So I'm going to go ahead and hit process and jump over the laser, hit the start button, and we'll see how this cuts out. All right, so we have our parts. The P2 did a really nice job. It only took 2 minutes and 2 minutes to 6 seconds, I believe, and everything dropped right out. And just a nice caramelization, just a little bit of that kind of vaporization, overburn a bit on some of these pieces. But the real test is to see if I got the fit right. The idea is that these will fit snugly together and lock in place without being too loose. So the idea is that this would knock down, and these do slide together, but they're a little loose. So what I would like to do then is go in and adjust the kerf, tighten these up, and unfortunately XCS doesn't have that option, but I can either use the outline and offset it down, or I can go into my original drawing back in SketchUp and just tighten those up. The other option is to just tighten up these slots in LightBurn using the slot resize tool. So a few different ways to adjust for that, assuming you have a tool outside of XCS. If you're using XCS, you would need to try to do an offset of your shape a certain amount, try to just shrink it down. But just one of the reasons it's nice having multiple softwares to allow you some extra design tools. So I'm going to snug these up and rerun it and make sure we have that nice and tight. Then we'll come back again and see how it fits. All right, we've got the fresh set of parts cut. I adjusted the slot width by just 0.05 millimeter. And so let's give this a shot. And yeah, there we go. There's no wobble to them. They're nice and tight, but if I need to, I can slide them back apart. That's really perfect, and that's why I was dialing that in. And of course, this is going to differ material to material, but let's go ahead and get this put together. So I'm putting these slots in on one end for our main body, and going pretty well. A little snug on that one. There we go. Make sure they're fully seated. And then we'll put the top one in as well. Here again, wanting them just to fit nicely together. I could possibly back that kerf off a little bit. Again, material is going to be a little bit different each time. So you want to be double checking that you have consistent material. There we go. So we've got these parts in, and now we just need to put this piece in the back. And that should slot into these tabs nicely. And there we go. We have our pen caddy in wood. And so, let's see, I've got some pens here. Of course, well, there we go. Engraved Vintari's Workshop pens. So you could set those in there real nicely, put them on a table and be able to display your engraved items. So kind of a cool thing. And then also, since you have these plates up here, you could actually engrave your logo top or bottom as you want. So definitely something you can do. However, I mentioned acrylic, so let's go ahead and try that. Now I have this scrap piece of translucent acrylic. Here's some red translucent acrylic that I actually picked up at a local big box store. So I'm pretty sure this is not cast, but extruded acrylic. However, for just cutting it on the CO2 laser like the xTool P2, we should be doing just fine on that. We're not going to be gluing it together and not going to be engraving it. So I think this will do all right. But we're going to highlight the CO2 nature of the xTool being able to actually interact with this translucent stuff. So if you're using a diode laser, you're going to want to pick something opaque and not clear. But the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, we're going to take a look and see how the camera picks this up. I have a feeling this is not going to show up too well in there. So first thing we got to do, take our handy digital caliper. We want to measure the thickness because I'm pretty sure this is going to be a little bit less than what our other stuff is. So, and yeah, just a bit. So the other stuff was around 3 millimeter. This is actually 2.75 millimeters. So we're going to want to go back in. We're going to want to adjust for the thickness, but also keep in mind the amount of kerf that we took out for the beam. Because again, we want this snug, but we want it to fit tight enough together so that they hold and they don't wobble, but we want them to be able to slide in and out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We'll pop this in the laser and we'll see how it comes out. All right, so I've dropped the acrylic in the P2 and we're going to go ahead and refresh it to get the see how well it can see the acrylic. So let's jump back into XCS here and let me just get my face cam out of the way a bit. All right, so here we can actually see it okay, but you kind of see over here on the edges it gets a little hard to see. So depending on your acrylic, especially when they're translucent, you may want to add something. So what I'm gonna do is pull it out quick and we're gonna try something that I think might help. So give me 1 second and we will be right back for that. All right, so I've pulled this back out and what I'm going to do is actually take a marker. Now, this is a permanent marker that's white. Otherwise, like acrylic paint pens that you've maybe seen me use in other videos would work as well. And all I'm going to do is on the very edge of here, I'm just going to put a little line on the corners because we're not really going to be cutting into the corners, but hopefully this will show up on the camera a little bit better and give us just a little more reassurance that we're working within our extents. I'm actually even going to go in the middle of the sides just to be sure we're catching the corners. So there you have it. I've added these little marks just to the edges and such, and we'll drop that back in there. And then we'll also see if it's going to be able to focus on this, and that's where being able to statically put in our material thickness. So once again, you want to double check with your calipers that you know the thickness. So make sure you've got it set to millimeters if you're working in that one, and we're going to be going with 2.75 millimeters on this. So let me drop this back in the machine, and we'll have it re-grab that image, see how it looks. All right, let's. I've got it back in there, so I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh in the upper right here. That should bring back our acrylic, and now you can kind of see those little markings here on the sides and the bottom corner. You notice the top is out of frame. That's because the slats go further than your laser head can actually move. So this is only our actual working area. But this gives me just a little more reassurance that we are going to be looking at our extents. So again, let's test the focusing. So I'm going to bring it, let's bring it to one of these darker spots first. See if it can read it. The laser's moving over and nope, it said exceeded. And let's maybe try it in one of the lighter areas. No, it can't. So what we're just going to go ahead and do is we're going to come over here about 2.75 And then obviously we're going to change this, and I am going to go with, I believe we have a, we're going to go with transparent acrylic. Do we have a, there we go, 3mm transparent acrylic. That's going to be as close to this red as we can work with. And now we want to import our material or our cut file. So here we can see it's here, but it doesn't show up very well on this one. So if that's the case, what you can do is you can come, oops, you can come over here and we can actually change that to, say, the yellow layer, and now we'll be able to see it easier. Just another little thing if you're working with a dark material. And so we've got our material in there, we've got our thickness, we got to change that back to 2.75. And we've got it aligned. We can also do a close view just to double check. There we are. It still looks good. It's not far off. So at this point, we're just going to process it and watch it go. All right, we have our parts here cut out of this translucent red acrylic, and it came out pretty well. I did accidentally, I was setting up my camera in there and I canceled the job, and when I came back I forgot it had bounced back to score. So the first piece started to score first, I restarted it. So there's just a little residue that will actually clean off generally with just a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. So this piece is fairly clean, and if you have a little bit of residue on the others, there again, you can clean that off. So something you're going to want to check with this more clear stuff is any flashback could leave little marks and such on there. So you want to make sure you have a clean cutting surface. But let's see how well this fits together. So again, we have our side rail and one of these end pieces, and we want them to, yeah, just kind of fit in real well. They snap in together, but I should be able to pop them back apart without breaking them. And there you go, I can. That's fitting really nice. That's really what we're going for, and where you want to play around with the kerf of your laser to really dial in your cuts for just that nice snug fit, not too much pressure, but fitting well without rocking around a lot. So let's go ahead and get this one fully assembled. We're going to drop this other piece in the other slot like so. Again, push it in until it sits. This is actually working almost better than the wood, probably because it's almost got a little bit of a shiny, smooth surface to it. And that's one of the nice things about CO2 lasers is they do leave a fairly clean cut on the acrylic when you get the speeds dialed in. So there we go. Those are in there. So like, as you can see, it's a pretty nice finish. If I can get that to focus on there. It's the edge is pretty shiny, fits really well. And then of course our back piece sliding in as well. There we go. So class it up a little bit with a acrylic, translucent acrylic if you've got CO2 caddy. Otherwise, have our wooden one. You got both of these standing right here. I'll try to drop in some shots of them on the workbench here, holding some pens and such, give you an idea of the finished product and such. As I said earlier, the goal of this was to create something that you could display some pens at a show where you might have maybe some pens you turned that you've engraved, or even if you just turned them without engraving them, pens that you've engraved out, like maybe they're aluminum anodized or the rubber coating that you're marking them off and such, or even just on your workbench where you want to have a few handy. Just some ideas to play around with it, and something to kind of spice up your table at craft shows and such, or clean up your workbench at home. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and maybe you learned something, or just like to see something else being designed and how it cuts out in a couple different mediums. If it sparked some interest in you, go ahead and leave a comment. Tell me what you thought about it. Tell me what you might change a little bit. And tell you what, if you want to play around with these files, I am going to drop these out there for free for other people. These are the kind of things that are really going to help makers in selling their product and such. So I want to give this out there for you to have and just use if you're doing craft shows and such. Hopefully this is a way you can spice up your bench and share your items for sale. So I'll have that link down below. And if you use it, hit me up on Facebook or in the Laser Engraver community group. Maybe put a post out there And, you know, all the thanks is just leave a comment, hit a like on this video. And if you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe. I do a lot of laser reviews, project videos, instructional things. Definitely try to give back to the community and help you become better with your tools in your workshop. So I'm going to wrap this up here. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. And till next time, hope you can get out into your workshop and make something too. We'll see you again soon.